Something is different today.
What do you mean?
Why am I a cat?
Meow.
Stop making fun of my situation, I'm serious!
More importantly, why am I shorter than Tricky?
How does thumbs?
What's the problem? I like this. Well then, if you have told me that the company behind Hello Kitty were to team up with Netflix to create a show about sexism in the workplace, the spreading epidemic of overworking the lower middle class, and death metal, I would have probably believed you because Japan does some weird shit. Frankly, not the weirdest anime I've ever watched, but it's up there.
Released earlier this year, Aggretsuko, or Aggressive Retsuko, has taken the internet by storm, and for good reason. It's exceptionally relatable and hilarious, especially for us downtrodden working women of the world. But frankly, anyone who has had to repress their personalities at work can relate to the little ball of red panda rage.
Despite its rather cutesy appearance, the show actually features some very mature themes and covers some heavy topics regarding marriage, love, and finding a certain level of stability despite the struggles that come with being where you're at.
In case you haven't watched the show yet, it's about Retsuko, a young red panda of 25 years that is working in your average Japanese office. We never quite learn what her company actually does, but by keeping this vague, it allows for pretty much everyone to put themselves into Retsuko's place. At work she has to deal with a literal pig of a boss who discriminates her because of her gender, and probably because he is a prick in general. Some of her colleagues fare better because they suck up to him, while everyone forces her work on poor Retsuko. But since she's a bit too nice for her own good, she never dares to speak up and instead releases her anger by singing death metal karaoke after work. Throughout the show she looks for ways to escape her rather shitty work life, but she gets a reality check every single time and things hardly get any better for her.
To quote Chief Bogo, "Life isn't some cartoon musical where you sing a little song and your insipid dreams magically come true. So let it go." And yes, I see the parallels. But this show's dedication to realism, despite it being about anthropomorphic animals,
Headcanon that Zootopia and Aggretsuko take place in the same world accepted.
is one of the highlights. Things don't magically get better for Retsuko, and she has to deal with consequences of fighting against the office hierarchy and her own inner death metal nature. That's how life is. You have to take your lumps, and some people get more than others. Even in their little friend group, there are varying levels of struggle. Haida has an easy time because he's a male, Feniko is relatively fine because she doesn't take crap but also doesn't give it, and Retsuko, well, you know.
For example, we find out rather early in the series that one of Retsuko's longtime friends is actually planning to pursue an entrepreneurial startup in the future. This is one of the examples of opportunities shown in life that may have caused the show to go in a very different direction. Speaking from personal experience, working on startups and trying to run your own business is never easy. There's far more to keep track of than your other normal expenses, such as insurance, shipping, work hours, and even potentially taking on new venues. In cases like the freelance market, getting sales without some form of number behind your name can be very difficult, and even then you're still not ensured financial stability. The startup shown in Aggretsuko, while far more practical in terms of prospective careers, would not have been able to support Retsuko financially, especially if she's still paying off her student debt.
Even worse, because, according to Tone, her education was funded by the company she works for.
Speaking of Ton, let's talk about the main antagonist of the series. Mostly, is he realistic enough or just an exaggeration?
Tan in general is obviously meant to be a caricature of a bad boss. There's a reason why he is depicted as a pig and not any other animal. He gives Retsuko way too much work and is overall sexist and only treats those well that actively suck up to him. He himself is lazy and still complains about how stressed he is, even though he does next to nothing besides asking for tea all the time. That being said, there is a bit more to him than meets the eye. Later on, we do learn that he is mostly old-fashioned and out of touch with modern times. He himself implies that he was treated similarly when he started out, though he probably didn't have to deal with sexism. There is no excuse for that. Yet still, he is more product of his time than anything else. And while he is rather lazy, he also proves himself to be one hell of an accountant when the deadline is right around the corner. Best thing is, he doesn't even need a computer for that.
I still hate him because he reminds me of every bad boss I've ever had, present and past. Not Firebrand though, he's wonderful. But Tone does get some redeeming moments and characteristics late in the series. But his comments about women's work really rubs me the wrong way. Which leads me to another aspect about this series that I love. Gori and Washimi. These two ladies are sublime and I eat it up whenever they are on screen. You can tell that they have worked hard to get where they are and they take themselves seriously, especially Best Bird Washimi. They are worthy of being women that Retsuko and Feneko strive to be, but they never ever say that it is easy being where they are, nor is it easy to achieve what they have achieved. They help to prove Tone wrong. There are no barriers to excelling in the workplace based on ability due to gender, unless someone forces that stigma onto you, like Tone does. I also want to say that, as a big woman, seeing Gori rock herself and being larger than most of the other women we see on the show warms my heart.
You know, that's something I find fascinating about the show. The fact that they show women being strong without having to go overboard. Gori and Washimi are two examples of how women can assert themselves without having to go too far when it comes to writing. Gori, despite being tough and almost stone-faced in appearance, is shown to be soft and very likable. Her overall bulky and almost bodybuilder design is contrasting to her character, showing that while she is physically strong, emotionally she's rather soft. See the part where she breaks down in the karaoke bar for reference. Washimi, on the other hand, is strong in a different way. As a literal secretary bird, she is the secretary to the CEO of the company. Despite being essentially the assistant to the biggest guy in the food chain, Washimi asserts an obvious authority over the CEO, and if anything, probably has more power over him than the other way around. Heck, she'd probably be running the place if it weren't for otherwise.
What?
I'd say that's about right.
Can we hurry this up? I have an appointment for Firebrand at 3, and then I have the new recruit orientation, and then...
Okay, we get it. There's the joke. Now get on with it.
In any case, the point of the show is that everyone has some hidden depths to them. There's more to Tom than meets the eye, and even Gori and Washimi, who appear like incredible superwomen with no weaknesses, are shown to have some private issues as well. Same goes for Tsunoda, who appears like nothing more than a suck-up, but is still shown to be rather self-aware. No one is as one-dimensional as they first appear. And then there's of course Retsuko's struggle to live a happy life. Even though she is a protagonist and the audience is obviously meant to identify with her, she doesn't exactly do everything right either. She can be rather self-centered at times and often doesn't think things through. Some of the criticisms Ton, for example, throws at her hold true, even if he is an asshole.
True, but a message doesn't hit home unless it is delivered in a way that the person receiving the message is receptive to. He constantly belittles her, treats her like a servant, calls her useless because she's a woman, but what really wakes her up is when he actually treats her like an equal, a person just like him. He gives her candid advice, and while he never stops being a jerk, even with his advice, his demeanor and the sincerity is what hits home. Retsuko is still young, just like us, and we have had a lot to learn from those who are older than us and more experienced. But if those older than us treat us like garbage, why would we want to learn from them? Why would we want to be like them, treating others horribly and having people hate us? Retsuko deals with her problems naturally. I'm sure we've all held on to that one significant other because we want not to be alone more than we actually like the person. We've all just slapped a smile on our faces while screaming for holy justice on the inside. We've all ignored something hateful someone has said, even though the underlying message may be beneficial. Retsuko is real, and we love her for it.
That's the benefit of this kind of show. While all fiction is some part a reflection of the struggles of life, nothing quite shows it in its most raw form than slice-of-life comedy. Seeing our daily struggles through the eyes of another character is in some ways a means for us to deal with the problems that life throws at us. Of course, simply seeing it isn't enough. There's the factor of comedy after all. Little things like exaggeration and absurd humor makes the show pretty entertaining, but where it shines is making fun of the problems of daily life. Despite Aggretsuko being somewhat prolific in its messages about life, the fact that it makes fun of our daily problems is also another reason why it has such a lasting impact. Comedy is tragedy plus time, and even though these problems are happening in the now for the characters, most of us have had similar experiences in the past, and as a result, we find the show's take on it pretty funny because it's making fun of something that used to cause us trouble. Ah, the joys of laughter. Nature's defense mechanism to life's vicissitude.
True enough, Aggretsuko wouldn't be as popular as it is if it wasn't for its comedy. As we already mentioned, Retsuko is pretty much a stand-in for the audience as well. It is easy to relate to most of the things that happened to her. A lot of people had very similar things happen to them in real life. Obviously most of the stuff is exaggerated in the show, but since the situations are so familiar, there actually is a certain catharsis factor to see them played for laughs here.
Perhaps one of the biggest ouch, that's me scenarios was, unfortunately, the out-of-pocket prince. I've stayed in bad relationships before because I was more afraid of being alone, and I enjoyed the feeling of being cared for more than I actually enjoyed the guy's company. Sometimes it ended badly. Luckily, Retsuko doesn't have to experience anything like I did. But her awakening when she comes to terms with how crappy her relationship actually is, and decides to snap out of it and get her life back together, was just a little reflection of the victory I felt when I got out of my bad relationships. Though I wish I had had the death metal stomp down for a couple of my more scummy exes, dang it.
That's an interesting part I found about this show. A lot of relationships in mainstream media are usually shown as either struggling or toxic relationships, yet that doesn't seem to be the case with Aggretsuko. Due to the nature of television, drama in relationships tends to sell a lot more than mundane ones, and thus there's a severe lack of representation for relationships that simply don't work. In cases like Retsuko and the Space Cadet, we can see that they're simply not compatible, and while Haida struggles with his feelings, the show takes a far more mature aspect to it in the end.
Haida is not the quote-unquote nice guy who blames Retsuko for going after someone else. He accepts that he didn't act on his feelings and lets her be happy like a friend should. And then when he does get the chance to tell her how he feels, he acknowledges that he may not know her as well as he thinks he does, but he'd like to try. That's a much more mature way of thinking, and I applaud Haida for being the sweet boy we've come to know him as. He's my sweet boy and he reminds me of my boyfriend.
In general, I like the fact that Aggretsuko goes out of its way to show that love doesn't fix all of your problems immediately. It is often a bit of a misconception in media that everything will be fine as soon you find your soulmate and marry them. Retsuko considers to simply marry someone to get an easy out and become a housewife, but the show makes sure to give her a reality check for that as well. Not to mention that when she falls in love, it almost ruins her life because she can't think of anything else and as a result screws everything up. The show doesn't condemn love, but teaches not to rush into a relationship right away. And Washimi and Gori point out that love has its problems, just like Retsuko's crappy job. It is not all sunshine and pokies, people. It takes work. In any case, let's wrap things up.
Overall, I found Aggretsuko to be a very charming and quite entertaining show. Personally speaking, I found the main trio of protagonists to be quite charming, and the rest of the characters to be pretty funny all things considered. Despite the show's rather cutesy appearance, I was surprised at how much it covered both visually and narratively. While I've already covered the show in terms of its art style, taking a second look at how the story intertwines with its visuals is something I never fully appreciated until I had a better understanding of the ins and outs. As the show is easily watchable in one sitting, I found that its overall presentation is quite good and worthy of watching.
I love this show. I've watched it several times, I've binged it with friends and alone. I love it. Something about Retsuko speaks to me on a near primal level. Accommodating jerks, the demeaning bosses, the fake smile, the frustration, the metal, all just washes over me in a wave of blissful catharsis, with funny writing and adorable visuals. The scene where Haida thinks Retsuko had a baby was hilarious, if completely embarrassing to watch. And this show is not afraid to go strange places, which is something I miss in certain American shows. I don't know about you, but I don't remember the last time there was a constipation running gag in an American-based production. Canada, yes. I love you, 16. America, no. Overall, give me Aggretsuko all day, every day.
Aggretsuko is one of the most fun shows I have ever watched. Every joke hits, and since it's surprisingly relatable, you end up surprisingly invested in the show. I really hope that we get a second season eventually. And am I the only one who wants them to include Hello Kitty as an actual character in that show? But what about you? Have you watched the show? Did you like it? Anything that bothered you? Let us know in the comments.
And make sure to watch my video on the art of Aggretsuko.
Wonderful. Now how do I get back to having hooves? And magic? I miss the magic most. The thumbs aren't too bad. But my glasses are falling off my face without a proper nose.
You just need all the help, don't you?
I do, and it's bothering me.